The bell above the cafe door made a dull, too, note sound when I pushed it open. It was the kind of small shop that smelled like warm bread even in the afternoon. I always came after my deliveries, mostly for the quiet. 1 cup of drip, black, and a chair by the window where the light cut soft lines across the tables. She was already there that day, sitting at the counter with a notebook closed in front of her. Mid-40s, I guessed, hair pulled back like she'd just tucked it out of her face. She wore a navy sweater and a silver ring on her thumb. Nothing about her asked to be noticed, but the way she looked up from her coffee, slowly, like she wasn't surprised to see me, pulled something tight in my chest. "Hey," she said when I reached the counter. Her voice was low, even. "Same order?" I nodded. "Yeah, thanks." I'd been coming here long enough that she remembered, but still the small flicker of recognition felt strange. She turned to pour the coffee, and I caught myself watching the movement of her hands. Careful, steady. She set the mug down with a paper napkin folded neatly beneath it. "You're always here after the trucks," she said, not looking at me. I smiled, a little embarrassed. "It's quiet here. Easier than home." That was true. My apartment was 2 rooms, 1 window, and an old phone on the counter with half-typed messages I never sent. My friends texted sometimes, plans, memes, but I'd stopped answering much. Work and night classes filled the space, but not the silence. She wiped the counter slowly. "Sometimes quiet's good," she murmured, as if to herself. I wanted to ask what she meant, but she'd already turned back to her notebook. Instead, I sat at my usual spot. The mug was hot against my palms. Outside, a delivery van hissed at the curb. Inside, only the hum of the fridge and the scrape of her pen. When I looked up, she was watching me. Not in a bold way, just a glance, then away. A small smile passed between us like a draft. "You always read something," she said, nodding at the book in my bag. I laughed quietly. "Try to. Architecture stuff. Boring, probably." "Not boring." She traced the edge of her mug. "Building things that last, it's important." Her thumbs circled the rim once more before she stood to refill her own cup. I noticed the heel of her shoe was worn down. A small, ordinary thing, but it stayed with me. When I left, I folded the napkin she'd given me, for no reason at all, and slipped it into my pocket. My phone buzzed just as I stepped out into the street. A message from an unknown number. "You left your receipt. Come back if you want it." No name. No emoji. Just that. I stood there, the city moving around me, the napkin still warm from my hand. For a second I thought about turning back, but the door had already swung shut behind me. The next Friday it rained, the kind of steady rain that makes everything smell like iron. My jacket was soaked through when I carried the last box up to the school's art room. The office was dark. Everyone had already left. Her door, though, was propped open. "Just leave it inside," she called from somewhere in the back. I stepped in. The room smelled faintly of turpentine and chalk. She was kneeling by a sink, hair falling loose around her face, wrestling with a bent faucet handle. Water sputtered onto the floor in slow, uneven drips. "Pipe's been leaking all week," she said, glancing up at me. "Maintenance won't come until Monday." Without thinking, I set the box down and crouched next to her. "I can look at it. My uncle's a plumber. I've seen him do this kind of thing." She hesitated, then shifted aside. "If you're sure." My hands were wet in seconds. The faucet was cold and stubborn. She handed me a wrench from a drawer, our fingers brushing for the briefest moment. It wasn't electric, not really, more like a small, precise jolt. "You don't have to," she said softly. "I don't mind." We worked in silence. Rain tapped against the high windows. She held a flashlight while I tightened the joint, her other hand resting lightly on the edge of the sink. Her silver thumb ring caught the beam of light. When the leak slowed to a single drop, she exhaled. "You're a lifesaver." I'd have been mopping all weekend. I wiped my hands on a rag. Guess I just wanted to help. For a second we stayed like that, kneeling side by side on the cold tile. I noticed the small scar at her hairline, half hidden by strands of gray. "My ex used to fix things," she said suddenly, voice low. "I'm still not used to doing it all myself." I looked at her, but she didn't meet my eyes. "Divorced?" I asked carefully. She gave a small nod. 3 years now. My son's in college." It's quieter than I thought it would be. I didn't know what to say. I thought about my own apartment, the unsent texts waiting like small stones in a pocket. Quiet can be heavy, I murmured. She gave a quick, dry laugh. Yes, heavy. I gathered the tools, feeling something shift in the air between us. Not a confession, but the kind of shared truth that leaves a mark. She poured tea from a thermos on her desk, still warm. You should dry off before you go. She handed me a mug. The steam fogged my glasses. We sat at opposite ends of a long table, drinking in silence. The rain had softened to a mist. She traced the rim of her cup the same way she had at the cafe. I folded and unfolded my napkin, then realized I'd done the same thing last time. You're young, she said quietly. You don't want to get stuck here helping an old teacher with plumbing. You're not old, I said before I could stop myself. Her eyes flicked up, searching mine, then dropped to her tea. Still, there's a gap. I thought about that gap on my way to class at night, about how it might look to others, about my friends teasing if they knew. But in the art room, the thought dissolved into something simpler. Just being there, fixing a leak with someone who saw me. We didn't talk much after that. She stacked brushes, I gathered my things. Yet the quiet felt different now, like a pause instead of an ending. At the door, she touched my sleeve lightly. Thank you, she said. Really? I nodded, unable to speak. On the way out, I caught my reflection in the window. Wet hair, tea still warming my palms, and her shadow moving inside the room behind me. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. The next week, she wasn't at the cafe. No silver ring, no folded napkin. I sat anyway, staring at the steam rising from my mug, refreshing my phone without knowing what I wanted to see. By the time Friday came, my deliveries were late. When I finally reached the art room, she was standing at the window, blinds half drawn. A different light, gray and flat, made the room feel smaller. You're late, she said softly. No accusation, just a fact. Traffic, I mumbled. We moved around each other like two people trying not to touch in a narrow hallway. She signed for the boxes without looking up. Long week. I tried. Her pen hovered over the paper. My son's visiting. He's upstairs with a friend. She almost smiled. They're loud. The word son hung between us like a warning sign. I stacked the boxes too carefully. Good, I said. Good he visits. She set the pen down and rubbed her thumb along the silver ring. A small, restless motion. He thinks I work too much, she added. I wanted to say something. Anything, but footsteps echoed in the hall. Two young voices laughing, coming closer. She stiffened. You should go, she murmured. Before what? Before someone saw? Before it became a story? I hesitated by the door. I can help unpack. No, it's fine. A little too fast. She reached for a brush, knocking a jar of pencils. They scattered across the floor. We both bent down at once. My hand brushed hers. She didn't pull back right away, just a fraction of a second longer than necessary. Then she stood quickly, eyes on the window. Silence. Only our breathing and the faint clatter of the pencils still rolling under the table. I shouldn't, she began, but the footsteps passed, fading down the hall. I picked up the last pencil, straightened. I didn't mean I know. Her voice was barely audible. I know. She stayed by the window, arms crossed, looking out at nothing. I stepped closer without thinking, the air between us tight, like the moment before rain. You're shivering, I said. I'm fine. But she wasn't. Neither was I. Her hair had slipped from its clip. I reached up, just a reflex, to tuck it back. My fingers stopped an inch from her temple. She turned, surprised. For a heartbeat, we were facing each other, close enough to see the flecks in her eyes. Everything went quiet except for the pulse in my ears. She drew in a breath, sharp and small, and stepped back. You should go, she repeated, softer this time. I dropped my hand, nodded. Outside the door, the hall was empty. My palm still felt the heat of her hair, though I'd never touched it. It was already dark when she texted. Need a walk? No name, no emoji, just like before. I found her near the small park behind the school, the one with the cracked benches and a single streetlight buzzing faintly. She was wrapped in a long coat, hair loose around her shoulders. The air smelled like wet leaves. Couldn't stay inside, she said when I reached her. Too much noise. Your son. He left an hour ago. The quiet after. She gave a small shrug. We walked along the path without touching, our footsteps soft on the gravel. I kept thinking about how we must look from far away. 2 coworkers maybe, or neighbors. Nothing unusual. I missed the cafe this week, I said, trying to sound casual. I noticed. She gave me a sidelong glance. You don't answer your phone either. I smiled weakly. Bad habit. A pause. Then, quietly. I thought maybe you were avoiding me. I looked at her. The streetlight made her eyes darker. I wasn't. She nodded, but her hands were deep in her coat pockets. We stopped by the bench under the tree, the one where paint was peeling off the wood. She sat first, smoothing her coat beneath her. I stayed standing a moment longer before sitting beside her, not too close. I shouldn't have texted, she murmured. I'm glad you did. Wind lifted a strand of her hair across her face. She didn't move to tuck it away. I keep thinking, she said, eyes fixed on the ground, that I'm acting like someone I don't recognize. Waiting for Fridays. Wondering what you'll say. She trailed off. It's what? Dangerous. For me. For you. Her laugh was short, without humor. For the stories people make up. I pressed my palms against my knees. I don't care about stories. You should, she whispered. You're 27. You still have time to start over. I'm not a kid. I know. She turned then, met my eyes fully. That's the problem. We sat in the sound of the leaves. Her shoulders rose and fell. A deep breath she didn't let out all the way. I haven't told anyone this, she said finally. But after the divorce, I promised myself no more rescues. No more letting someone in just because they noticed I was alone. I'm not trying to rescue you, I said quietly. I don't know what you're trying. Her voice broke a little, then steadied. I don't know what I'm trying. Her confession hung there, naked but calm, like a window opened at night. I could feel the warmth of her hand through the coat sleeve, though we weren't touching. I think about you, I admitted. The words felt too big once they were out. More than I should. She closed her eyes, as if bracing for something. Don't, she said. Please. Why? Because I might think about you too. The streetlight flickered once. I felt an impulse, stupid, reckless, to reach for her hand. I almost did. My fingers hovered, then curled back. She opened her eyes. We should go, she whispered, but she didn't stand. I stared at the path ahead, gravel glinting under the light, the faint sound of traffic beyond the trees. Everything in me leaned toward her and away at the same time. What do we do now? I asked, my voice low. Not really a question, but it came out like one. She turned her face slightly toward me, hair hiding her expression. I don't know, she said. And still she didn't move. The following Friday I showed up at the cafe out of habit. Same table, same mug. The bell above the door chimed a few times with other customers, but not her. Her seat at the counter stayed empty. I waited anyway, scrolling through my phone without seeing it. My delivery route had shifted. The school no longer ordered through our company on Fridays. I told myself I'd still stop by, but the reason for stopping had gone thin without her there. Around noon I sent a text. Everything okay? No response. By late afternoon, I was at the art room, even though it wasn't on my list anymore. The door was locked. Lights off. On the notice board outside was a small flyer. Art department closed for family reasons. I stood in the hallway, holding the box of supplies like a prop I'd forgotten to put down. The next day she texted. Sorry. Busy. Nothing else. I typed, do you need anything? But didn't send it. Left it in the draft folder with all the other unsent things. Monday came and I heard from a colleague that her ex-husband had been in town. Something about sorting out property or helping their son with a summer internship. I didn't ask questions, but the picture came anyway. Him, not me, at the kitchen counter with her thermos, her ring glinting in the same light. On Tuesday night she finally called. Short, halting. Sorry I disappeared, she said. It's complicated. I figured, I said. He's not staying, she added quickly, as if reading my mind. He's just here for our son. But still, it's strange having him in the house. I said nothing, gripping the phone like it might slip. I wanted to tell you in person, she went on, voice low. But I couldn't. I almost asked, couldn't what? Couldn't see me? Couldn't decide? Instead, I said, "It's okay." She sighed. "I don't want you waiting for me." "I'm not." But the lie caught in my throat. Another pause, longer this time. "I have to go," she said. "Good night." The line clicked dead. That week stretched long and uneven. I caught myself walking by the park bench, slowing down, looking for her coat in the crowd. Nothing. At night I replayed our walk, her voice saying, "Because I might think about you too." It didn't feel like heartbreak exactly. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. On Friday I skipped the cafe. I sat in my apartment instead, at the small table by the window, phone on the counter lighting up and dimming with other people's lives. I typed another message. "You don't have to explain. Just tell me if you're okay." My thumb hovered over send, then slid away. Outside, someone knocked on a neighbor's door, loud and brief. In my head I saw myself walking to her apartment, knocking once, twice, waiting for her to open. But the picture stayed in my head. I left the phone face down, unfinished message glowing faintly. The room smelled of coffee gone cold. Across the street, the cafe lights blinked off for the night. Her seat at the counter empty again. It was a Wednesday night when she finally texted again. "If you're free, stop by. No address needed." I knew the stairwell by heart. Rain had left a sheen on the steps. Her apartment door stood half open. Inside smelled faintly of paint and lemon soap. She was at the kitchen counter, hair damp from a shower, sleeves pushed up, drying a mug with a small towel. "You made it," she said without looking up. "I almost didn't," I admitted. My voice came out lower than I expected. She set the mug down, fingers still on the rim. "I know." For a moment, neither of us moved. The fridge hummed. A clock ticked on the wall. I noticed the stack of papers by the sink, legal forms, envelopes, a letter from the college. Her son's handwriting scrawled across a note. "Mom, be good." She poured hot water into a second mug, sliding it across the counter. "Tea, not coffee." Too late for coffee. I wrapped my hands around the cup, letting the heat soak in. "How's your son?" "Fine. Busy. He thinks I should date." Her mouth curved, not quite a smile. "I didn't tell him about you." "There's not really an about me to tell," I said. She looked up at that. "Isn't there?" Something in her eyes, tired, bright, made me set the mug down. I'd been rehearsing this in my head all week, a dozen ways to start. All of them gone now. "I wanted to come before," I said. "But I didn't know if you wanted me here." "I didn't know either." She reached for the towel again, then stopped. "It's been a long time since anyone saw me in this kitchen. I don't even know what it means anymore." I stepped closer, slow. The floor creaked. "It means I'm here. Right now." Her hands trembled slightly as she folded the towel. "Do you know what you're risking?" "I think so." "You're 27. I'm 44. I'm someone's mother. Someone's ex-wife. Someone who—" She broke off, pressing the towel flat on the counter. "I don't care about the numbers," I said quietly. "I care about you." The words hung there, heavy but soft. She closed her eyes like she'd been bracing for a storm. "I wanted you to say it," she whispered. "But I was afraid." Afraid of what? Of having to answer. She opened her eyes then, and for the first time since the art room, she didn't look away. The air felt thin. "I don't know where this goes," she said. "I don't know if I can promise anything. But I keep thinking about you too, even when I'm trying not to." My chest tightened. "Then tell me to go, and I will." Her fingers reached across the counter, hesitant, brushing the back of my hand. Not a grab, a test. Her skin was cool, her thumb ring cold against my knuckle. "I'm not telling you to go," she said. I covered her hand with mine. We stayed like that, the clock ticking, water cooling in the mugs. It wasn't a kiss. It wasn't a declaration. Just two hands resting in the middle of a kitchen, everything fragile and real. Finally, she let out a small breath, almost a laugh. "Okay," she said. I nodded. "Okay." The clock ticked once more. The hum of the fridge filled the room again. Our hands stayed where they were. Autumn slid into winter without ceremony. Classes ended. My delivery route changed again. Still, some mornings at 8:47, I found myself in the small park behind the school, sitting on the cracked bench. The paint had peeled further, but the streetlight above still buzzed faintly. Sometimes she met me there before work. No rush, no secrecy. Just two cups, her tea in a thermos, my black coffee cooling fast in the cold air. We didn't talk about beginnings anymore. We just let mornings happen. Inside her apartment, the kitchen looked different now. Not rearranged, just lived in. My jacket hung next to hers by the door. Her son had met me once over dinner. It was awkward, but not unkind. He asked about architecture. I asked about his classes. Later, she squeezed my hand under the table like she was proud we'd gotten through it. There were still nights she stayed late at school, and I walked home alone. Still days when she pulled back into herself, and I left her space. But the space no longer felt like a wall, more like a room we both knew how to enter. On Fridays, we sometimes went back to the cafe. Same bell, same counter. She still remembered my order, still folded a napkin under the mug without thinking. One morning she forgot, and we both laughed at the empty spot under my cup. The bench in the park became ours in a quiet way. Sometimes she'd sketch while I read. Sometimes we just watched the leaves collect in the gutter. When she shivered, I'd pour her tea. When my phone buzzed with messages I didn't want to answer, she'd hand me the thermos without saying anything. I don't know when it shifted from waiting to being. Maybe the night she gave me a spare key just in case. Maybe the morning she reached across the counter, not to test, but simply to hold my hand while the kettle boiled. It wasn't perfect. She still had old fears, and I still had my bad habit of unsent texts. But the texts became fewer. Her laughter came easier. In small ways we repaired each other, like tightening a faucet, like folding a napkin. Nothing grand, just steady. This morning she stopped at the bench first, a paper bag in one hand. "Breakfast," she said. I handed her the coffee. She handed me the tea. We sat without speaking. The streetlight buzzed. Leaves blew across our shoes. "I keep thinking about the first time you fixed something for me," she said finally. How small it seemed. I smiled. It still was small. Maybe. She sipped her tea, eyes half closed. But small things stay. Her words sat between us like steam rising from the mugs. I reached over and brushed a leaf from her coat sleeve. She looked at me, a quiet look that didn't ask for anything. Just a shared moment of being seen. We stayed there a long time, 2 cups cooling, the clock in my phone hitting 8:47 without me checking. I didn't feel heartbroken anymore. I didn't feel paused. I felt present. Like life had finished the sentence after all. She caught my eye and smiled. The small, unguarded kind that started everything. I smiled back. That was enough.